Good morning, everyone. Thank you for starting your day with us. I am Kim Skates, Membership Relations Manager at Central Houston. I am here with Robert Peroni, Director of Economic Development, and Bob Uri, President of Central Houston. I want to begin this morning by giving a special welcome to our members. Thank you guys for joining us. Also, our Chime group and any visitors who are with us today as well. If you are with us and we are not recognizing you in our welcome screen, which should be popping up here in just 1 second, please use the chat box to let us know that you are here. We would love to hear from you. Please also be aware that we will have the Q&A box open this morning. We're going to do a brief Q&A at the end of the program. So feel free to ask any questions that you may have there. Here's our member screen. Welcome, everybody. Regarding our members, we just want to recognize that we lost a giant in our membership this week, Gerald Hines. Bob, I believe you want to say a few words.
Well, I just want to take note of this special time and our condolences to the Hines family, Barbara and Jeff and the other members of the family for the loss of Jerry. Yeah, Jerry was a dear friend and also a dear friend to Central Houston. He was in the very first meeting when Central Houston was, the idea of an organization to really be the leader for downtown was talked about. And then a year later, he was in a meeting where we formed Central Houston. And so he's been with us all the way. And so, well, during that period of time, Hines's reputation and massive works have become global. I don't think Jerry's ever forgotten sort of the roots in downtown. And so we're dearly grateful to him and just what his legacy is, really not to just us and our city, but frankly to all cities around the world. So let's just, I just wanted a moment to share our thoughts with you about that.
Thank you, Bob. Our attention, of course, this morning is also on the Gulf of Mexico. It looks like Houston is going to be spared the brunt of this storm, but our thoughts are with those east of us. This is going to be a big, bad hurricane, and we are feeling for them for sure. On that note, this program this morning will be recorded. You'll be able to find it on Central Houston's LinkedIn profile, also our YouTube channel, and we'll put it on the website. So if you are feeling like you have last minute storm preparations that you maybe should be doing right now, but you really want to hear this content, please know that you can hop off now and still have access to it later. You'll also have the opportunity, of course, to share the link with anyone in your organization, people who might be interested in this, who were not able to be on the call with us this morning. Speaking of programs, we have some upcoming programs as well as what we're doing today. On September 30th, we are going to do a sneak peek into the downtown launch pad. On October 27th, we'll have Chime Trivia Night, which Bob Uri is hosting for us. Looking forward to that. And then, of course, on October 30th, we are looking forward to our annual meeting, which will be a great program, and we hope that you guys will all mark your calendars for that. So I think that is all of the housekeeping notes. Robert, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Kim, and good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining us for what I hope is another great virtual event. Before we get started, I would like to say that we appreciate your partnership and support as we continue to ensure a vibrant and prosperous downtown. And while many aspects of business have been postponed, I promise you our work at Central Houston continues. We remain focused on our strategic priorities. If it's public safety, homelessness, street cleaning, access and transportation, the North Houston Highway Improvement Project, streets and green space improvements, or the Houston Innovation Ecosystem. In the upcoming months, as Kim referenced, we will be hosting events to update you on the progress we have made. In September, we will focus on the advancement of the Houston Innovation Ecosystem with the grand opening of the Downtown Launchpad, a project in partnership with our affiliate organization, the Downtown Redevelopment Authority. And in October, the annual meeting will focus on homelessness and explore how Houston is bridging the national narrative through emerging research, innovative strategies, and proven best practices. Enough of that for now. Today, we are excited to focus on our involvement in facilitating the North Houston Highway Improvement Project with the community and TxDOT. And I'm excited to introduce Marie Hoke, our project architect, urban planner, specifically focusing on this project. Last thing, as Kim already referenced, we will have a short, brief Q&A at the end, so please put your questions in the Q&A box. And with that, Marie, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Robert. I'm going to give you a tour or an update. Let's see. Is my screen showing?
Yes, Marie.
Okay, great, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is a big project, and this image shows you our project area for segment 3, the area that circles downtown 45 and 69. And just a little refresher about what the highway project consists of. It's 3 segments that extend from Midtown through downtown, that's segment 3 in yellow. And then in the purple, from I-10 to 610 is segment 2, and then from 610 to Beltway 8 is segment 1. And so TxDOT's goals for this is to manage congestion, enhance safety, provide expanded transit opportunities, and to improve mobility and efficiency. And the way they're going to improve the mobility and efficiency is to flatten out the curves in the freeway right now and to separate the through traffic from downtown Destin traffic. And they anticipate that that would amount to a 50% reduction in delay during peak hour. And then as far as safety, the reduced crash rates by about 30%. So that's pretty significant. This is the plan that TxDOT, the schematic that they have posted as of December 2019, showing segment 3, and it shows you the different sections through the freeway. But to help you understand that a little bit better, the areas that are shown here in lavender are the depressed sections, and the areas in red are the elevated portions. And so looking at it one more time, this diagram shows the red are the portions of the freeway that are being modified and shifted and decommissioned. And so what that shifting of the freeway allows is new open space, and certainly the decommissioned Pierce Elevated offers an opportunity there as well. And so at the beginning, we broke this segment 3 into 13 project zones. And the civic opportunities, we use that word a lot. What are those things? These are the listing of things that they are, and I'll walk you through that. So where the freeway shifts, new open space. Where there's a freeway cap or structure on the trench part, there's an opportunity for cap parks, and obviously the elevated park I mentioned. And then throughout this section, there's new street bridges that are being rebuilt as part of this project, and we'd like them rebuilt as garden bridges. Then we also have detention. The detention sites are holding the water that's pumped out of the depressed sections. And then to wrap it all up, highway aesthetics are the thing that is new to this area as well. So here's some examples of what these things are, and you're familiar, everybody, with the High Line in New York. That's an elevated park. In South Korea, there is a freeway that got removed from this portion of the city, and it allowed for new green space. And then obviously Clyde Warren is the closest example to us, but offers a really good illustration of a cap park. There are other components that we're looking at that are related to this that have to do with, again, with bridges and highway aesthetics and how to use detention facilities as a civic amenity. The goals for the civic opportunities or for this master plan are to reconnect neighborhoods previously disconnected by the freeway, to contribute to the resiliency of the city, to maximize development, and obviously the creation of these civic opportunities that everybody can enjoy. And this illustrates the master plan of all these things coming together, these little study areas that we've linked together. And what came out of this master plan study is a listing of about 35 projects in this area. And within those projects, there are some that are really standouts, like the Edo Cap and White Oak Detention Gardens that we're working on. And so the idea is that all of these projects together help us to create new linkages for pedestrians and cyclists, and turning that concrete loop around downtown into more of a green experience. And how do we do that? We overlay these different project areas onto the map of downtown city Houston, and you start to see connections forming, connections through open space, connections through trails and sidewalks and streets and caps. So the thing that set the course for us is this timeline. This week is the last week of August, or almost, I think Monday is the last day, but this final environmental is supposed to be coming out in August. So we have within days of this coming out and the record of decision following. That may slip a bit, but this is an important milestone. And it also, this illustration shows that these 3 segments are, while they may start about the same time, they have 3 different completion dates, and 2 of them are funded currently, segments 2 and 3. Now, if you ask yourself, or you ask me or Robert, is this project really going to happen? I can tell you that a good illustration of why it's going to happen is on the TxDOT website. I encourage you to look there. It's a pretty robust website. But if you Google North Houston Highway Improvement TxDOT, you should land on this page. And I've circled a couple things here that are significant: the request for qualifications and the project website for this project. The request for qualifications, why is that important? You can see all the correspondence and postings that have gone back and forth between the initial posting of the RFQ on the 16th of December of last year and more recently up until July of this year. These are all the addendums and presentations and correspondence going back and forth. So the process is soundly underway, with the qualifications by these design build teams being submitted July 23rd. We just crossed that milestone. And then if you keep exploring on that specific website for the project, you'll see a column on the left-hand side. And whenever there's something new, there's this little red flashing new thing that comes up. And so we had the pleasure of discovering one new thing last week. They've posted a new video for segment 3 that shows how the freeway encircles downtown. I encourage you to get on and look at that. And so revisiting segment 3 timeline, once again, the trigger points for us, the things that set the pace for us are these things in green: the RFQ being issued, being turned in, and then imminent is the draft RFP that's going to be sent to the shortlisted vendors from those qualifications that were submitted. We anticipate that happening this fall, possibly in October. There's some other things on this timeline that we'll get into a little bit later. But for us, we decided this year we need to focus on a few things because of the time sensitivity of them. And these are a couple, 4 of the projects that we're going to go into. North Canal project is a good example. It's under design. If you go to the City of Houston's website, you can find this diagram that shows the award of the project happening in October of 2019. Right now, we're in phase 1 where project drawings and documents are being developed. And then you can see in this turquoise phase 2, which is construction. So it's scheduled to wrap up in 2025, but the key thing is it's under design right now. And this is the area where the North Canal project encompasses primarily this north channel that's being constructed across this peninsula, and then the south overflow channel. And then there's other improvements to White Oak at certain key bridges. But the North Canal and the South Overflow Channel are 2 things that we're focused on to improving and enhancing. So the North Canal project in TxDOT's vision is proposed as a concrete bottom channel, which we feel like could vastly be improved if it were a wet bottom channel. And then in the future, it could be amenitized and enhanced to create trails and other pedestrian connections and usable facilities. Another thing about this project that's interesting to us are the potential it holds for some new waterfront development. You can see the Metro bus storage facility on the plan and here to the far right. When the channel gets cut, it cuts right through part of that facility. Metro's proposal is to put the portions that are being relocated over here on the other side of McKee. And we're saying, well, there might be another way to do this with a new alignment of the freeway to move the Metro storage facility into the old right-of-way and hug the freeway. What that does is that allows us to take this sort of waterfront condition and provide new development in that location. The south overflow channel also holds opportunities in that if we can allow the water to flow over the top of this area rather than to cut another channel, it allows us to flatten out the land in that area and make that usable recreation area, and then still preserve part of the area for more of a bowl traditional detention area. White oak detention gardens are more recent, something that we're exploring with a group consisting of a lot of different people, but this does have some potential impact on the North Canal, so we need to be in lockstep with that project. And this is the area that we're talking about along White Oak, the trails and the Be Someone Bridge and the freeway infrastructure that's going to be placed here. There's quite a lot of structure that is going to occur here that we're going to really need to visually mitigate. And so SWA has helped us to develop a really interesting proposal to TxDOT where we take their 3 detention areas that are shown here in light orange and we reconfigure them. And the reason we want to reconfigure that in this way along the bayou is to kind of flatten out areas so that we can plant trees to hide some of the kind of visual clutter and to also create new trails on that side of the bayou that don't currently exist. That has an impact though on the North Canal in terms of the upstream, downstream impact. And then another item that's time sensitive is the area in Midtown, and that's because this portion of the project is under a different procurement. It's a design bid build rather than design build. It's on its own schedule, and while it's parallel with the segment 3 design build part, it's under design by TxDOT engineers. And so right now, in helping them shape the forms of the caps and bridges, we have opportunities. This is currently what they're showing as their intended layout for this area. You can see 3 cap elements and several bridges. We obviously want to propose to green those. And then here's an example at the Wheeler-Caroline crossing where if this were a sea of concrete rather than green, this is the green, this is the sea of concrete. We don't want that. So we're making sure that we develop the details necessary to make sure that we can plant on these caps because it's a much better condition than this. And then there's also, in having close communication with TxDOT on this, we're able to catch things. Like we caught this at our last meeting where there's these little wings that are being added to this bridge because of the structural span here. And so we're saying, well, gosh, you know, could we do better than that? Are we able to shift that around so we get a more usable cap space? This is a work in progress, and we're actually meeting with them this afternoon to discuss that. Okay, so now I need to catch my breath and be on pace, but the garden bridges are, again, are an important part, and Midtown offers us the opportunity to really study this in more detail. This is actually an example from Westcott at I-10. And this little walking path is probably about 4 feet max. And you can see in the new condition that we really applaud the City of Houston's leadership on. They've negotiated these much wider bridges that allow anywhere from 12 to 17 feet of pedestrian realm on each side of the bridge. And why that's important is, again, there are 25 new street bridges being rebuilt as part of this project. And we want to make sure that they are rebuilt to high comfort levels. And aesthetics. Aesthetics are the thing that kind of tie it all together. Obviously, when we have bridges and caps below, we have a trenched highway. And we're trying to reconcile the current green ribbon that has 3 different themes throughout the city with a more neutral central city scheme that provides some of the verticality, but also is more subdued. Because for us, the really important aspect of green ribbon is the green part. Here are some really good examples. There's Uptown, and this is 610 at Bel Air, of great greening. And so we want to make sure that we also provide that. Here's an illustration of why that's so important. This is the section through Midtown. This is Alameda Road right here at the forefront and towards the back Main Street. But there's a lot of odd geometries and crossings here that really need to be softened by the trees, by the greening, and also to help stitch the neighborhood back together. So lastly, we have the Edo cap that is also time sensitive, and that's because of the development study that we've been engaging in more recently that could have possible impact to the TxDOT supporting structure for that cap. So when we last left you in September, you would have seen this. And so this is our 30-acre cap park. And this is the condition we showed you back then, the before and the after, and the significant impact. This is a large area. And so that's also a large area to maintain if it's a park. We started looking at a base condition because we knew we probably couldn't have the fully built condition initially. So what was a minimally acceptable condition? And so we said grass and some trees. But then Clyde Warren 2.0 happened in Dallas, and we started taking a look at that because that park, it's about 5.2 acres. And so quite a bit smaller than ours. Ours is, this is about a sixth of what ours is. And they're looking at a structure of 3 to 4 stories on the end of their cap. So we said, should we be really considering how development engages along with green space on the structure? And so we engaged Walter P. Moore to help us study what kind of things could we put on the existing structure and that don't require any additional reinforcement. So we landed 4-story sticks and bricks, 2 to 3 stories of steel, lightweight steel frame are the type of structures that can go on there. So then we took that one step further and we said, okay, well, what can we do if we enhance the structure below? Really looking down the road at the long term. And so we engaged with UTIL to do a study for us. And 2 key things, we really wanted to understand how this area was being used and the impact of the sports venues and neighborhood presence and the GRB. We also said this is an important linkage on that green loop that we were talking about earlier. How can we really support that? And out of our initial findings, we said there are 4 key signature features that must be maintained no matter how we vary up the building development on the cap. And so starting with this big green square here, that's the event lawn, and that's can support the necessary people that we would need for a World Cup gathering, a fan fest. It's also a space that can be flexible and used for George R. Brown Convention Center needs. And then we also said, recognizing that Texas Avenue is a heavily walked, traversed area between the sports venues, that might be the ideal place to put a public market and plaza. And then we also have vent structures that we're coming to find out are needed in about the center of the cap, and that's to exhaust the tunnel system below. And those can be quite significant in size. Lastly, and more importantly, we have the Edo Ramble. It's kind of a nod to Las Ramblas in Barcelona, but it's a promenade that links from one side to the other. It's about 3,300 feet long, but it can serve as the anchor that development can plug into. And this is what that looks like. It's a place accommodating cyclists, pedestrians, and all kinds of people from either the neighborhoods of Edo or downtown. And then over here to the right of that, you see the public market and plaza. And one of the things you'll note are the tall buildings. This is on the Edo side. There's a possibility of doing land-based tall portions and smaller plinth structures on the cap. But what we discovered when we started putting buildings on the cap is that there's plenty of space left over for open space and green space. So we felt like we were on the right track in terms of breaking down the scale of the Edo cap. You can still have your event lawn, and again, accommodating these event structures that for the Boston Rose Kennedy Parkway were quite huge. They had these big buildings that wrapped around them. And then we said, okay, with those 4 elements in place, let's study 3 different options for development: light, medium, and heavy. Light being no adjustments to the structure of the cap below, medium, a few modifications, and then heavy, more modifications. And the reason we would want some modifications is to allow taller buildings. On the light scheme, you can see here that the taller buildings, it's kind of hard to tell from this diagram, but these are on the land-based portion of the cap. So that's why they're taller. And this scheme does not require any modifications to the structure below. The heavy scheme, it does involve some modifications. You can see some of the markings here in the bottom left that indicate where the enhancements need to be. And we're actually costing that as we speak to understand what the impact of that is. So while all of this has been going on, we've also had some important milestones. The facilitation process for segments 1, 2, and 3 wrapped up this spring. And out of that process came multiple comments that were incorporated in a letter from Mayor Turner to Commissioner Ryan. and which was also followed by letters from Judge Hidalgo and other public officials engaging with TxDOT to support improvements to the project. The facilitation group consisted of these entities, and they actively participated throughout the entire process, which was led by the City of Houston Planning Department. And again, the goals are to unify stakeholder comments for inclusion in the mayor's letter. This is a letter from other state officials, Representative Morales, and also City Council. Very important to have City Council's input and support of the project, and we very much appreciate their participation in this. And then we also appreciate Judge Hidalgo's interest and participation. And of course, the letter from Mayor Turner, a 2-page letter outlining our goals for the project, not just TxDOT's, but what the city wants to see. There are some of the goals there. But even more important, attached to that letter was a 12-page appendix. And in that appendix was carefully broken down all the projects that we want to see included or allowed for in the project. And so we took those items that were in that 12-page appendix and we put them in a spreadsheet. And here you can see them all listed. There's about 26 of those, and this is for segment 3 specifically. They're categorized under things like connectivity and local streets and park and urban space. And so what we did then is we laid them out on the map here, located those things, and you can see they're equally dispersed across segment 3. And then we said, okay, let's use this as a roadmap, and let's talk about the ones that are not getting much traction. Let's identify the ones that are on the bubble and the ones that are already in. And so we were left with some white areas out of here, and we said, let's color code those with a blue color and call those are more than on the bubble. They really are close to getting in, but they need a little nudge. The ones that are in red really need support. And of course, there's a new category of purple that requires critical City of Houston leadership, and that has to do with the right-of-way acquisitions that need to happen. So resorted this and said, okay, this again is our roadmap, so we can keep track of the things that need careful attention. Fortunately or unfortunately, all of these need attention about the same time, but we did focus, like we said earlier, on those ones that are very time sensitive. And because we need to start, continue the dialogue about potential funding sources. We have examined all of these, and one had a very positive outcome on one thing that we did, which was the expansion of our TERS back in December, TERS 3, which you can see in purple and has expanded now into this yellow zone that helps pick up the areas of the project that would allow us to more actively support. And then we also recognize that the management districts play an important role in this because of the maintenance agreements that need to be in place for any kind of landscaping or other such improvements. And then we can't forget the guidance that we've received from the Mayor's Steering Committee. And these are the members that have participated in the last 2.5 years on that committee. Also is the interest and involvement of our state representatives. And these are kind of color coding Representative Garnett Coleman, Representative Christina Morales, and Representative Harold Dutton. These areas are their areas, and they are actively interested in what is happening. So we also have engaged with the county officials and commissioners. And again, it's been great to see their interest and involvement in the project and their support for improving the project. This timeline, again, we're revisiting here. You saw that we talked about the RFQ and the RFP. Well, the mayor's letter really was a big threshold for us to say, this is what we want to TxDOT, and for TxDOT now to be in a position of responding back to that. And so once we clear the FEIS and record of decision, we can really start to get into more detailed discussions. But we also have the draft RFP coming up in the next month or two, and that's where we include our requirements for the highway aesthetics, garden bridges, and of course, then right before the final RFP that's going to be posted next year, all the projects get considered for inclusion in that. So I hope I haven't overwhelmed you with information, but here is the portion of the program we'd like to take some questions and answers.
Marie, that was great. Thank you so much. Wow, what a lot of information. Please do pop your questions in the Q&A box and we will get to those. We have a couple right now. Marie, personally, what aspect of this project are you most excited about?
I think seeing something really happen. I think, you know, we were in a conceptual stage for a while, but I think that there's an alignment with care and concern and commitment to improving this project on all fronts, I think. And I think the work that all groups have done to kind of push and nudge and speak up, it's really been a process that has been great to see, and that engagement will lead to this project being improved. So that's been the most exciting thing.
So, and I think you kind of just answered this other question, which is, what would this project look like if Central Houston was not involved?
Wow. I'm very proud of this organization and my colleagues, and without Bob, Lonnie's, and everybody's, Jackie's, Alan, I mean, Al Janita, everybody that has participated in that has really put this at front and center. And it's just, and really allowing me to work as a dedicated resource on this project. I can't imagine being able to do it without a serious time commitment to what we've done.
Because TxDOT's not really obligated to work with us on this, right? Like they can, technically they could just build it however they wanted to build it, and we're
I think it's a different era. I really, you know, I think all of us in the community acknowledge that we can't do like in the 50s where things were just installed and nobody was considered or consulted. I think it's, I think we're seeing a different era. And I think that we have seen a responsiveness from TxDOT that has been a positive. They seem engaged, and they do seem to care, and they, you know, but it does take that constant attention, working with them and providing them alternative solutions that I think is going to make the difference.
And I will say, just for the good of the group, we had a very healthy discussion last night about how many years Central Houston has been involved in this project. The answer seems to be it depends on who you ask and what you mean by involved. But Central Houston has been at this for a very long time. Our next question. Currently, there's some elevated road work happening around Hardy and Nance on the north end of downtown. Is that associated with this project?
I can't say for sure. I think that what's interesting that we've discovered is that there's ongoing construction in areas that we know will in the future be either dismantled or reconfigured. And I think that just speaks to the nature of how important our traffic system is. And especially we can all understand today with evacuations and everything, how it's important for it to function properly. So I can't speak to that specific area, but yeah, it's always changing, and you know, things are always evolving there.
Let me add to that. The project at Hardy and Nance is the rebuild of the old Elysian Viaduct. It's now a new Elysian Viaduct. Okay. It's actually a TxDOT project. It's been on I don't know how to say it, low priority status in terms of its schedule, so it's taken quite a while to build it. It is obviously coordinated with the North Houston Highway Project. But it actually sort of the planning for it really came before the planning really got to the level of schematic design that we have now in North Houston. The one thing I might point out to you, if you all have seen it, it will be already, I think it's already become noted for its very brightly painted columns and structure. And if you haven't been up in that area, it's probably worth actually going up and looking at it. It's pretty dramatic. And I like just to give credit to our team here, working with our friends over on the north side, and now Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia, who was at that time a state senator, for actually the coloring of the columns is really the artwork, and it represents the colors in a Mexican serape. And artists worked with, frankly, our team in helping to sort of put this thing together. So you're already seeing on social a good bit of many images from that area up there, and this bridge isn't even done, and it'll still be a while before any vehicles drive over it.
Thank you. Marie, what type of program is being considered with regard to the heavy development for the EdoCab?
Well, there's a variety of things, and what we're trying to do is test out different models where it's office, hotel, residential, retail. So it's all type of programs. We're not trying to prescribe or constrict to a specific program, but in as much as it kind of makes sense where to place tall structures versus lower scale structures, we're letting the structural capacity of the cap and the spans of the over the highway kind of inform where those things might happen. But it's really all type of development.
You mentioned that you thought the timeline may slip. Do you foresee any timeline adjustments due to present circumstances? There's not really a clarification to.
The timeline has slipped since we began on the project. So, you know, it's kind of almost easy to predict, but that it might slip. But I think what we've seen is kind of a steady pace since the RFQ was posted. While things have been delayed, for example, the submission of the RFQ was originally scheduled for April. Now it went to July. There are those delays, but it seems to be on track for everything else. So it should be interesting to see when the record of decision and the environmental come out. If they do come out in the next month or two, if they don't, that could speak to more delays. Not sure if, you know, the current circumstances will cause any delay, but we haven't seen that yet.
This question is about access during construction. How will the north-south traffic flow be facilitated across Wheeler?
Well, I can't specifically speak to that, but I can specifically say that there's a committee that's been formed to study things like that. And the reason that we don't know exactly what the solution is that they're in large part leaving it to the design builder to inform that process. So they'll be working hand in hand to determine how best to reroute. And we understand that, you know, I think everybody knows that you can't shut down multiple sections of street into downtown, that there's got to be a plan for how to do that. So there's no specific plan yet for a specific condition, but we understand that that needs to be done.
Regarding the Metro Rail, how will the project affect the Metro Rail when crossing over to the north side?
As I understand it, and the Metro folks can speak to this better than I can, but there's no shutdown of rail desired. So I think that I can only speak to the rail system in the Midtown area, where we have gotten into very specifically on the Wheeler light rail station. And my understanding is that the shutdown is desired to happen over a weekend, as opposed to anything that, you know, requires a longer shutdown of the rail.
Very nice.
I think let me just add on. I think the same will be true on the north side as well. I think it'll be temporary only in terms of shutdown, just to put structural elements in, again, over a weekend, evening, or something like that.
Can you give us a little bit more detail around the Pierce Elevated? What happens with that?
Well, the Pierce Elevated, right now, the desired deployment is to do an elevated park, and but since that's the last on the timeline, on the schedule, in terms of what TxDOT has shown us to be the sort of rough schedule for how they're going to do the segment 3 portions, and they have to have the rest of the freeway in place in order to decommission that. We know that's kind of the end of the timeline. But nevertheless, what we're looking at is a way to maintain a crossing from one side of downtown, from the east to the west and west to the east, uninterrupted. And so that idea holds a lot of appeal regardless of how the development happens around the Pierce. But obviously it's important that the right-of-way is acquired by the city so that we can have some ability to influence how that development happens. And the idea is that it happen organically, incrementally, and that maybe portions of that freeway structure, even if some of it gets dismantled, it gets rebuilt so that that passage from one side to the other remains. And so there's still work to be done on that, but there's a lot of interest and support for keeping the elevated park as opposed to dismantling the freeway and not having that opportunity.
So thinking about the timeline, if that is at the tail end of segment 3, the Pierce elevated side would be affected, when would you expect?
Well, what we've seen is that they've published in the request for information about 7-year time frame for development of the really segment 3. And actually, yeah, that's correct. And so we know they're probably not going to stay on that. It might be 7 to 10 years. So if you can kind of map out, roughly maybe 2/3 of the way, it could be very well into, 2026, 27 before that any work starts to happen there.
Thank you. Where will the funding come from for the parks and landscaping, and same for long-term maintenance?
I'll take a shot at that one if you want, Marie.
Yeah, sure, Bob.
That's a question we're spending a great deal of time on right now. And you saw a long list of possibilities that we've been looking at for a while and really trying to get into deeply. I think the sort of criteria that we really would have for what makes a really good eligible candidate for funding is what entities and what funding sources can make kind of a long-term commitment on this. Even the city of Houston actually faces some limitations when it comes to that. My current thinking at this point, I mean, based on discussions with a lot of others, is that I think the TERSs, the tax increment reinvestment zones, will play a strong role in this with associated redevelopment authorities. A redevelopment authority, which is created by the city of Houston under Texas law, can make a pretty long-term commitment. And that's what we're going to need, because actually what will happen is we're going to have to find a way that an advanced funding agreement can be entered into with TxDOT as TxDOT begins this work. And then actually for improvements which gets installed over, you heard, sort of a 7-year period. And then at some point out in the future, we're going to have to come from the outside, basically outside of TxDOT, and pay for this portion that is not covered by TxDOT. And so, that's happening over a pretty long period of time. And so I think that plays into it. The management districts do play a role, I think, possibly on maintenance of certain types of facilities. There's actually quite a lot of history there, including for the downtown management district. Hasn't really been gigantic amount of obligation and resources, but there is a record which actually goes back now quite some number of years to work on that. Other possibilities actually would include clearly, in some cases, maybe philanthropic funding. It's always hard to sort of mix philanthropic and the public money. I think other possible grants, federal grant money, other funding streams may play into it. And in the case of the EDO cap and perhaps Pierce Elevated redo, one of the issues will be, is there a way that there can be revenues that are actually derived from improvements built? And it could be everything from, restaurant lease or something like that to something far more aggressive where it might actually be real estate development. I would say we have studied that issue because you're building in air rights over the road and over a federal interstate highway. And there are federal rules on that. And so some fair market value return would need to come back to TxDOT for the project. And so, while we think it could be a gold mine, it might not be as much of a gold mine as we think, just because of the way the federal rules set up. And frankly, philosophically, I think I have some agreement with that. But anyway, we're in now, I think, quickening our pace related to really working through what comes to the front and beginning to move on putting in place the structures that we will need in order to make these agreements with TxDOT really in about the next 12 to 15 months. And so we've got some work ahead of us.
So you're saying it's really simple and straightforward then, huh?
Oh yeah, really. If anybody had the simple answer, please give me a call or text me.
Marie, you mentioned the White Oak detention ponds have an impact on the North Channel. Can you go into more detail around that?
Yeah, it has to do with the flow, the upstream flow down into the North Canal, and it may or may not, but we are working with Steve Costello and his group on the North Canal, trying to understand. We want to make sure that whatever we do doesn't have an adverse impact on what they're trying to do.
What are the prospects and impacts of the project for the Wheeler Station node with the Metro-owned parcels? Any development opportunities there?
Yeah, I think so. There's the way they're reconfiguring the station, and this has to do with how they're building the new tracks off to one side of the existing tracks. So the tracks are moving more towards the west, and that allows, and then they're redoing how they're going to bring buses into the, into engage with that station. They're going to engage them around the perimeter rather than down the center. So it provides some more usable and developable land on that in that area.
And then another question about the EDO cap. Can you just review the timeline for the implementation of the EDO cap?
Well, I think for us right now, the design timeline is that we need to get some things figured out before they get too far in publishing what the requirements are for that to the design build community. But then it's a matter of, you know, working through if we are going to have any improvements to the cap that are below, or if we want to provide for planting, how do we do that? And so that installation of all those elements is important. But I think maybe what they're referring to is, you know, how long is this going to take to develop? And again, we're not exactly sure. We know that we strongly suspect that the north part of the segment 3 is going to be installed first because of the ease of working with fewer entities there. And so we imagine that the EDO cap would be somewhere about in the middle of that timeline. So if you have a 2022 start and you add, you know, 3 or 4 years to that, you might be looking at, 2026, 2027. We do, we do know that the World Cup bid is in 2020 for 2026 is still out there, and we were hoping to have that completed for that, but it may not coincide. So likely it'll be after 2026.
And then just one final question. This project seems to solidify downtown as a major residential area, and may even help solidify that area as a work, live, play region, especially given some of the remote working trends that we're seeing today. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's very exciting, especially given what we've all lived through today, to know that we can have the necessity of having open space and green spaces is very clear. And I think to support the new upcoming residential communities that are developing downtown, you need to offset the verticality with some horizontality and some green. And so being able to introduce 30 acres of green space, or even half that amount of green space, onto the east side of downtown where it's much needed is very exciting.
Great, thank you. Robert, you have some closing thoughts for us this morning?
All right, well, thank you, Marie, for all of the information. And I hope for our members and the people watching, we were able to answer some of the questions you have related to the project. Really specifically, when is this project going to happen? How are these impacts going to affect change here in Houston? And we're really excited about that, and our work will continue. I promise you that, with Marie and Bob and the whole team, Lonnie. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us related to the freeway or anything in particular. And we just also want to thank Bob for jumping on, and Kim, thank you for hosting the Q&A. As part of this, as Kim said, it will be on YouTube, and we do ask that you please send and share this link with your employees within your companies. Our goal moving forward is to make sure that the information gets out to everyone, and we're really excited about that with the launching of our new YouTube channel. And with that said, please everyone be safe as we get ready for a weather event, and remember to always show America why Houston is so great, and remember to check on your neighbors in this time. Thank you.